Oga, open your fuel tank.
Hold on, please. Let me calm down.
Nigeria and France sign agreements to enhance urban transportation and water supply in Lagos and Kano states.
President Buhari restates commitment to sustaining beneficial relations between Nigeria and Kuwait.
Senate resumes plenary, stresses need for increased funding for security agencies.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on Nigeria's economic development through oil and gas.
And we start with this quote by the Nigerian Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Ibe Kachiko, at the 173rd meeting of the OPEC conference, where he described Nigeria as a gas country. As he said, and I quote, "We're going to try and change our dynamics from being an oil-producing country to being a gas-producing country, because that is really what we are."
All right, now in terms of Nigeria's oil industry, the minister also spoke about the upstream and downstream sector, including, of course, investments, as well as providing an update on Nigeria's petroleum policy and stressing how important it was for Nigeria to get investors back into the field of production.
Yes, Kingsley, Nigeria is one of the top nations in the world with huge natural gas reserves, and her gas reserve is about 3 times the value of her crude oil in reserve.
Now, Nigeria, of course, as Sherwin just indicated, has huge natural gas reserves. These are already being exploited through the liquefied natural gas project and Bonnet, plus, of course, the gas-fired power plants in different parts of the country.
Now, and as stated by the GMD of the NNPC, Mekanti Baro, domestic demand for gas is currently at 4 million standard cubic feet per day and is expected to grow to over 7 million in the next 5 years.
Experts, however, are indicating that gas development in the country has been constrained by a number of factors, and these include the fiscal terms, gas pricing mechanism, legal and regulatory frameworks, as well as inadequate financing.
And consequently, government introduced a natural gas policy and a gas master plan targeted at promoting a public-private sector partnership for an orderly and speedy commercialization of the nation's gas sector.
It is in the spirit of furthering this partnership that the Nigerian Oil and Gas Conference and Exhibition holds every year to bring key players across the Nigerian energy sector for networking, sharing of ideas, as well as exploring new opportunities and innovations in the industry.
And with this year's theme of driving Nigeria's oil and gas industry towards sustained economic development and growth, this year over 700 industry professionals, including many key stakeholders from both the public and private sectors, are in attendance.
Now, one question to ask is, how can the Nigerian oil and gas industry be more effectively harnessed towards national economic development as well as individual prosperity? That is the focus of our program this morning. That's Good Morning Nigeria.
Yes, Kingsley, and this is the midweek edition of the program, and we are reaching you live from the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. I am Sheung Olagunju. Thanks for always joining us.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I also join my colleague Sharon in appreciating your being with us on the program today, in the course of which we have our regular companion segments, and these include newspaper review, business, sports foreign, and others. In the meantime, we're taking the highlights of the morning news with our caster this morning. That's Kende Olaleye. Hi, Kende. Good morning.
Good morning, Kingsley and Sharon. Here's the good morning news. Nigeria and France have signed two credit agreements to the tune of $275 million aimed at enhancing urban transportation as well as water supply in Lagos and Kano states respectively. Also to benefit from the mutual beneficial relation between the two countries is the land degradation project in Ogun State. These were the fallout from the high-level talks between President Muhammadu Buhari and the visiting French President Emmanuel Macron.
Our discussions on one-to-one basis is around security, especially in the Sahel, the economy of the region, and how it can be successfully and politically integrated. For Nigeria, what I personally emphasize is the inter-basin transfer of Lake Chad.
Our willingness to help the four countries working together against Boko Haram. We want as well to be more present in terms of stabilization in North and Northeast. That's why we decided to invest $75 million in stabilization in this region. We want to do more in economy. Your economy is so important and huge.
President Muhammadu Buhari has spoken of Nigeria's commitment towards sustaining and deepening the beneficial relations between Nigeria and the state of Kuwait. The president stated this while granting audience to the outgoing Kuwait ambassador to Nigeria, Dr. Abdulaziz Azara. The ambassador formally extended his country's invitation to President Buhari to officially visit the state of Kuwait.
The second country for you, and you are almost welcome in Kuwait.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Excellency. Thank you. Thank you.
The federal government has denied the news making the rounds of a default judgment to the tune of $8 billion by the United States District Court against the federal government of Nigeria. The acclaimed amount comes from an arbitral award dates back to an unconsummated agreement made by the United States and the federal government in 2010.
Which this administration is inheriting in form of arbitral award. What is being taunted as the default judgment was actually a default entry by the court clerk.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has called on stakeholders in the African automotive industry to pay more attention to vehicle refinancing. The Vice President, while receiving a delegation of international automotive investors comprising equipment manufacturers and other stakeholders, noted that it is impossible to have a successful automotive sector without a robust vehicle financing regime. The need to beef up security network for Nigeria's peace and unity as a platform for fundamental development of the people occupied center stage of deliberation by the senators at Tuesday's plenary. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Nko reports that the Senate President Bukola Saraki, while welcoming senators from Rivers, called for increased funding of security agencies and moderation of utterance from the citizenry.
And every one of us. Issues of criminality are involved in these heinous acts, and the vigilance of our community leaders and average citizen is crucial.
In a related development, members of the House of Representatives have urged government to give more priority to the quest for enhanced security checks throughout Nigeria. The House equally wants mainstream media to step up activities by disseminating news real-time to checkmate the spread of fake news, which oftentimes fall communal crises in the country. These and other suggestions came to the fore at the resumption of plenary following a motion of urgent public importance on the recent crisis in Plateau State.
All theories known to peace building and dialogue have been experimented on the plateau.
We have had Fulani headsmen who have lived with us in our communities in peace and have reared their cattle.
Great nations pull together in moments of crisis. We're in a crisis moment. Let me seize this opportunity to again call on all Nigerians to give peace a chance and to have respect for the sanctity of life.
The All Progressives Congress APC rally in honor of President Muhammadu Buhari at the Den Ayim Stadium, Owerri, Imo State, witnessed an unprecedented crowd with leaders of the party in the region promising block votes for President Muhammadu Buhari's re-election.
To assure you, if President Muhammadu Buhari is doing what he's doing in the southeast just now, he will certainly do more post-2019.
If anybody wants to support APC, it must be total. There's no partial support for APC, for president, and support the governor differently, House Assembly differently.
At this juncture, may I respectfully and humbly say congratulations to the Southeast. Congratulations to the Igbo-Buhari Alliance. The journey has just started.
And the National Secretariat of the All Progressives Congress has continued to play host to friends and supporters of the party's new executive, led by Comrade Adams Oshiomhole. Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Malam Garba Shehu, was among the latest visitors. After a closed-door meeting with the leadership of the party, Malam Garba had an interactive session with the media where he speaks on the government approach to tackling lingering insecurity in some parts of the country. The government, under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, he says, is building infrastructure in line with its campaign promises.
Because this is about people who had been lied to. You know that the second Niger bridge is 65% complete now.
With the Nigeria Police first budget approved, the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, says all personal allowance will be expeditiously processed and paid. First Public Relations Officer Acting DCP Jimo Moshood reiterated this while parading a suspected bandit and criminal militia at the force headquarters in Abuja.
The budget has been approved now. The IGP has directed that the payment process and the payment will be done promptly.
The protest by police mobile force personnel.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Shion after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive, be security conscious, Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
The Nigerian broadcast sector is evolving. Operators, including cameramen and photographers, require new skills and techniques to churn out world-class productions. A unique opportunity is open to all. NTA TV College Jos is organizing a 4-week intensive short course in camera operation techniques aimed at enhancing the professional skills of cameramen and photographers, practicing and freshers. Date 16th July to 10th August 2018. Another 4-week intensive short course in photojournalism and photography holds 13th August to 7th September 2018. Venue for both courses is the TV College premises, NTA TV College, Rayfield, Jos. Fee 100,000 naira per participant. Accommodation inclusive. For more inquiries, contact us on 0806 980 9807 and 0703 660 7155. TV College, Jos. Training you to be the best you want to be.
Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1, the delicious combination of rich cocoa and wholesome goodness of milk. Just add hot water to get an instant chocolatey treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. Just add hot water. Airtel, the smartphone network.
In the financial world, Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board signs a $10 million equity investment agreement with a petrochemical company. Details in our business package.
Hello and welcome to Business News. Now, the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board has signed a $10 million equity investment with a petrochemical company for the construction of a 5,000 barrels per modular refinery to be situated in Imo State. The Executive Secretary of Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, Mr. Simbi Wabote, said the investment decision was in line with the board's vision to be the catalyst for the industrialization of the Nigerian oil and gas industry and its linkage sectors. He said the agency, as part of its mandate, will intervene and fund projects and activities directed at increasing Nigerian content in the oil and gas industry.
Producing 5,000 barrels per day will probably not address the issue of importation of fuel and the rest, but most importantly, it is to address the challenges we face in the Niger Delta with regards to vandalization and cooking of oil, if you like, that is polluting the environment.
And the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company strategizes on ways to seek approval for members to triple the size of its debt program to 440 billion naira to boost lending through the creation of a secondary housing market. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission has given the Transmission Company of Nigeria its approval to procure extra power to serve as spinning reserve that could stabilize Nigerians' electricity grid. Managing Director of the TCN, Usman Mohammed, disclosed this in Abuja during a meeting to chart a course to its plan to procure and install brand new supervisory control and data acquisition and energy management system. Equities market on Tuesday closed on a negative note as NSE All Share Index depreciated by minus 0.90% to close at 37,605.12 basis points, as against minus 0.87% depreciation recorded previously. Here is the trading figures. That's business news for now. I'm Comfort Amadou. The news continues.
Thank you very much, Comfort Amadou, there for the business package, and good morning, Nigeria. Next for us now, we'll review the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyibi, is already with us in the studio. Thanks for joining us, Bayo.
Thank you, Sean. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning,
good to see you. And, let's take a look at the stories. Of course, the story from the Nigerian Tribune. That's our first port of call. Nigerian Tribune, just below the nameplate, says, gunmen kill 7 policemen in Abuja. Details of that story can be found on page 2. And beside that, you have other headlines also relating to conflict and crisis. How I made 500 underwear IEDs, that is improvised explosive devices, for Boko Haram. 15-year-old confesses. That story is on page 2 in greater detail. Police parade councillor and 7 others over killings in Benue. With a rider, no proof to arrest Mieti Allah now. That's according to the army. Again, that story is on page 2. The lead story says, with a kicker, killings. Senate begins process to create state police. History will judge us harshly if killings persist. That's according to Speaker Dogara. That's one of the writers. 2 others say, protesters at National Assembly call for Saraki and Dogara's resignation. And governors and ministers sponsoring them. That's according to the Senate. Now, the story of the killing of the 7 policemen in Abuja is also part of the lead story you have on the front page of the Punch newspaper. And it comes with a double-decker headline and 2 riders. National Assembly backs state police as gunmen kill 7 cops in Abuja. And lawmakers say police reform bill to get speedy hearing, and protesters demand Saraki and Dogara's resignation. Sure.
The Blueprint also has that story on the killing of the policemen as its major headline on the front page of the Blueprint. Gunmen hit Abuja, kill 7 cops. With riders, rep seek probe of weapons in Plateau violence. 2019 polls under threat. CAN, as the Christian Association of Nigeria. Senate Mall State Police will face harsh history verdict if, that's according to Dogara, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Details of that story is on the page 6 of the Blueprint. There are other headlines beside the nameplate of Blueprint. 2019 will determine fate of Igbo presidency. Oshiomhole, Ganduje, others. France can't solve Nigeria's security problem. Macron, as the visiting French President Emmanuel Macron, saying that. Detail of that story is on page 5 of the Blueprint. And below the nameplate, protesters storm National Assembly over 270 billion naira constituency projects. Riders seek Saraki Dogara's removal. Caution sponsors, Senate tells Buhari. And then down the front page of the Blueprint, 41 corpses recovered in Zamfara bandits attack. 4 arrested. That's according to the police. And there are other headlines there down the front page of the Blueprint. 2 men arrested for raping own underage daughters. There's a sad one there. Ekiti, Fayoshe's allegations baseless. INEC, Kano gets first private university. 14 girls drown in Katsina boat mishap. Well, let's come to you. The killing of the 7 policemen in an attack in the Federal Capital Territory.
Yes, it's a shocking development that happened about 8:30 p.m. in the evening. Witnesses indicated that the gunmen had arrived at that scene in 2 cars and another one of them on a motorbike. And they shot at the policemen who probably they took by surprise. And unfortunately, before that incident, the same gunmen had shot a man at another filling station very close to that destination. The policemen are on a stop and search operation along Galadimawa area of Abuja. Meanwhile, the police command says that they are after the trail of the gunmen. Meanwhile, persons that are said to be involved in the killing in Plateau have been arrested, and some of them have been paraded by the police. At the last count, 14 were arrested, another 11 has been arrested, including a councillor. Also, several persons, including up to about 142, had earlier been reported to have been arrested in Benue. When are they going to be charged to court? Nigeria and France have signed agreement over projects totaling about $475 million. The projects are designated for 3 states, Lagos, Kano, and Ogun. For Lagos, it is meant for urban mobility improvement. For Ogun State, it is for reclamation and reforestation, while that of Kano is for water supply. The discussion by the two presidents, President Muhammadu Buhari and President Emmanuel Macron of France, also highlighted their concern about security in the Sahel region. Yes, the French president said that they cannot help the security situation, but they are also concerned about security in the Sahel region, and they hope to work together on that. President Muhammadu Buhari also emphasized the concern to tackle the challenges of the Lake Chad.
I think the comment by the French President Emmanuel Macron with regard to, we also have that headline, it's actually the second lead story on the front page of the Punch newspaper, below the photograph of the French president and, of course, the president, while the French president was being introduced to some members of the Federal Executive Council. The headline there says, France can't fix Africa's problems. It's simple. I think that kind of brutal, candid statement is to be appreciated. Yes. Because oftentimes, you know, developing countries, especially those from Africa, are often, you know, tabling their challenges and problems before the advanced world. And it says, look, yeah, we will assist. Absolutely, we will assist you, but it is your responsibility to fix your own problems.
It is in their colonial mentality. Even during the recent crisis, unfortunate crisis we have had, several other persons have called on the ICJ, had called on the United Nations to come and rescue Nigeria. We have to solve our problems, particularly the problems that we created by ourselves.
That's right.
Most of the problems are emanating, particularly if you study the history of the crisis. Whenever we are having election on the horizon, there is a tendency for all these crises to increase, and therefore you cannot dissociate them from the politics of religion, of ethnicity, and regionalism that is killing one Nigerian, killing the other, for no just reasons. So we need to sit up to tackle our problems.
That's right. And that, of course, it's a wake-up call that it is time for us to overcome the mentality of what Rodney was talking about, how Europe underdeveloped Africa, or Chinwenzu and the West and the rest of us. Take your problems, face them squarely, and then, of course, you'll be on the path. Singapore, under Lee Kuan Yew, where it wasn't crying to the West every day for assistance.
In fact, they shut their doors and said, anything we cannot produce, we don't need.
Absolutely.
And that is how they were able to produce whatever they needed.
And then, of course, we've talked about the horrific story of the 7 policemen who were killed in Abuja on Monday night. Although, of course, we have sympathy to the police authorities as well as to the families of those who have lost their lives. Anywhere in the world, if you take down a law enforcement officer, it's a huge development.
It's a serious
huge development. That's right. All right, so but let's return to the Punch newspaper. Above the nameplate of the Punch, there's an economic story there. Domestic debt servicing gulped 923.3 billion naira in 3 months, and that's according to the Debt Management Office. Details of that story can be found on page 27. Now, there's a story there. That's a special edition of the Punch, actually, on the World Cup. There's a story there on Maradona. Diego Maradona is offering to coach Messi and Argentina for free. That is after the fact of the 2018 World Cup. They're already back home and having their summer holiday already. Bayo, let's quickly take another headline. That's right at the foot of the front page of the Punch newspaper. It says, Borno governor claims insurgency in Northeast largely over. That's on page 45. I knew of my father's kidnap before Argentina match. That's according to Mikel Obi. That's captain of the Super Eagles. Again, Soyinka attacks Obasanjo in new book. A writer there says, ex-president, that's Olusegun Obasanjo, takes lecturing job at the National Open University. That's in Abeokuta. It is on page 12. He earned his PhD earlier in the year, by the way.
Yes.
The Daily Sun has mostly similar headlines. 2019 polls that determine Igbo presidency in 2023. That's attributed to President Buhari. With the rider, Southeast APC mega rally for President shakes Owerri. And the major headline there is also about the protest at the National Assembly as Senate President demands release of 2018 budget allocation. Protesters storm National Assembly. They were sponsored by Governor, Ministers, Saraki. The details are on page 6 and 41 of the Daily Sun. And below the picture story of the Daily Sun, Northeast insurgency largely over. That's according to the governor of Borno State. There's talking points. Yes, the protest.
Actually was organized by a group that called themselves Citizen Action to Take Back Nigeria Card Ban. And they were demanding the stepping down of the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, particularly that they alleged that the 2018 budget, there was connivance on their part to tamper with the elements of the budget, and they argued that this was not in the national interest. The Senate immediately went into session, closed-door session, and later on discussed that. Senator Barnabas Gemade actually gave a background and said that constituency project is to ensure that federal projects reach every nook and crannies of the nation. The Deputy Senate President also gave a background and said the history of constituency project dates back to 2007 when the late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua introduced it as a means of getting projects to the grassroots. However, the Senate President lamented that the protesters were sponsored by ministers and governors of the ruling party, and therefore the president should call them to the order. The protesters also called for Dr. Saraki to resign following his connection with the suspects of our robbery. Meanwhile, the Senate also, considering the security situation in the country, has referred its Senate committee in charge of constitutional amendment to pursue the possibility of amending the Constitution, particularly to accommodate state police as well as community police. In another resolution, it directed its Judicial Committee on Human Rights and Legal Matters to also come with a bill for a creation of a Truth, Peace and Reconciliation Commission. These are to be done in 2 weeks as part of the measures to tackle the security challenges. Meanwhile, there's that human interest story. Not many Nigerians knew that 4 hours before Nigeria played Argentina in that last group match, Mikel Obi, who is captain, had been told that his father had been kidnapped. He was linked on telephone to talk with the kidnappers who demanded ransom and also warned him not to alert the authorities, otherwise he will risk his father's death. He was in a dilemma whether to inform the coach or the players. At the end of the day, he didn't want to distract his teammates. He kept it to himself, and he played that match with such determination, with that albatross on his mind.
All right. Well, yes,
his father has been released since last month.
It's been released, but that was very poor information management. Yes. Why did anybody link him up with the kidnappers at that point?
His relations were panicking, and they had to do that.
Yeah, they were panicking.
But I praise his courage.
That's right.
To have kept it to himself and to have been able to play that match with such determination and leadership.
There's no doubt that it would have weighed on his mind, heavily so, if you like, in the course of that particular encounter. Sometimes, I understand the necessity, of course, of saying, look, try to pull all stops in order to ensure that a kidnapped relative is set free. Well, let's take a look at other stories. Very quickly, before we come to the editorial, development in Ekiti State. This is from the Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune is just on the right-hand column there. It says, DSS arrests 2 in Ekiti school. With 2 riders, Fayose causes stir, confronts security chiefs. And another one there, Abuja court quashes Ekiti government white paper. This is with regard to the attempt to disqualify Kayode Fayemi from participating in the election on account of the fact that he has been indicted by a judicial commission of inquiry. Let's take a look now at the editorial. Sharon, you have another story? I go straight to the editorial. All right, this editorial is from the Blueprint newspaper, and it's at page 12, with the headline, Avoidable Childbirth Deaths. So recently, UNICEF ruffled feathers with the disclosure that in every 10 minutes of a day, one Nigerian woman loses her life as a result of pregnancy-related complications.
Right, it's sad that a woman has to die while giving life.
Yes, it's very alarming, and the
sad.
statistics are very scary. And listen to this. In a week, you have 769 women dying. In a day, 109. In a year, you have 52,560. And in every month, 3,333 dying, all from needless childbirth deaths. And the UNICEF says that something has to be done drastically about it. And the whole health system needs to be overhauled. However, it has praised the initiative of some state government that have provided free services for maternal care in their hospitals. But they say that is not enough if these scary statistics are to be redressed.
Thank you very much, Bayo Aturibi. Hope to see you tomorrow for another edition of the newspaper review. Now, we'll take a short break. We'll be back to start our discussion.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three
You are welcome, sir.
as usual, yeah?
Welcome, you take that one. You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice.
Are you sorry?
That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The NTA Television College JOS admission forms for diploma program in film and television production, television engineering technology, broadcast journalism, and degree programs in mass communication, television journalism, and mass communication television production is now on sale. The sale of forms will commence 14th May and run to 13th August 2018 at the cost of 7,500 Naira only per form, payable through the remitter platform in favor of NTA Television College JOS. Forms can be obtained from all marketing offices in NTA State Capital Stations, zonal centers, Training Directorate of the NTA Headquarters Abuja, and the Office of the Academic Secretary of the NTA Television College. Applicants are required to possess 5 credits in GCE, SSCE in relevant areas of study, including English and mathematics, in not more than 2 sittings. All completed forms attached with photocopies of credentials must be submitted on or before the 13th of August 2018 to the stations where the forms were obtained. For further inquiries, please contact the Office of the Academic Secretary on these numbers. Announcer, Registrar.
Time for our discussions, but we'll take a backgrounder. And the 2018 Nigeria Oil and Gas Conference and Exhibition is underway in Abuja, with participants stressing the need for the country to push down the cost of oil production. The theme of the conference is driving Nigeria's oil and gas industry towards sustained economic development and growth. Lydia Sampson has that report.
The Nigerian Oil and Gas Conference and Exhibition is coming 4 months after Nigeria hosted the first Nigeria International Petroleum Summit, NIPS. Little wonder, this conference is settled on building on gains recorded through reforms by President Muhammadu Buhari's administration in the oil and gas industry, which experts say is setting the stage for sustained development in the country. Minister of State Petroleum Resources Ibe Kachuku says the president's zero tolerance to corruption has stopped allocation of oil wells to friends and families like in the past.
Refinery, for me, is very critical. If there's anything that we must leave as a legacy here, is the fact of being able to get refineries to work in Nigeria and beginning to reduce the level of exportation of raw crude from Nigeria.
The Secretary General of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, Mohamed Sanusi Barkindo, in a keynote reiterated the role of oil in modern civilization and sustainable development. This, he explained, is the reason why volatility in the oil market have negative consequences for consumers.
The impacts of the Declaration of Cooperation has had on the global oil market is transformational. It has caused a significant change in industry-wide and public perceptions of OPEC.
OPEC, he said, has succeeded in reversing the downturn from 2014 to 2016 when world oil supply growth outpaced demand, leading to falling prices. The Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Mekan Tibaru, revealed that the NNPC will go to the capital market to raise more finance for new oil and gas projects.
On the strength of our performance, our immediate priority is to sustain and consolidate on what we have achieved across the value chain thus far.
Mekan Tibaru noted the increasing domestic demand for gas, currently at 4 million standard cubic feet per day, expected to grow to over 7 million in the next 5 years.
Thank you very much, Lydia Sampson, for that background report. We have, of course, guests here with us in the studios to discuss this issue in greater detail. Let's say how we can better utilize the oil and gas sector for the nation's sustained economic development and growth. First, at this time, we'd like to welcome the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Content Development Board, is Simbi Wabote. Mr. Wabote, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria. All right, and then also here with us in the studios is Malam Mele Kiari, his Group General Manager, Crude Oil Marketing Division of the NNPC, that's the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. Malam Kiari, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria as well.
Good morning.
And also joining us is Professor Wumi Iledare, President, Nigerian Association for Energy Economics. Thanks for joining us, Prof.
Good morning.
Appreciate your time. And also joining us, Kayode Akiode is the General Project General Manager, Total Upstream Nigeria Limited. Glad you could also join us for the discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Gentlemen, you're all welcome.
All right, Sharon, of course, it's a pleasure to have Professor Iledare here with us in the Abuja studios. It's always been our guest on Good Morning Nigeria, joining us from many of our network centers, either in Port Harcourt, Ibadan, or Benin. Professor Iledare, pleasure to especially welcome you to our headquarters studios here in the Federal Capital Territory. Now, gentlemen, let's begin by dealing with some otherwise counterintuitive issue. That's to say, the theme for the conference that is ongoing is driving Nigeria's oil and gas industry towards sustained economic development. And people are going to start asking, lay out on the street, at a time we are hearing, that there's life beyond oil, that the oil age is coming to an end, that we have to diversify and de-emphasize oil and gas in our economic development and sustenance. How come? We see it at the same time seeking to drive the oil and gas industry towards sustained economic development and growth. Professor Ledari, Professor of Energy Economics, let's begin with you.
Thank you again for this invitation to be here. It's been a pleasure. Let me give a background with respect to what we see out there. First, we have about 37 to 39 billion barrels of oil proved. That means there's 90% chance that we're going to
all right, Professor Ledare, we understand we have some audio challenges with your microphone. The engineers will sort that out in a moment. But before they do that, of course, let's bring in another guest, to deal with this issue that I've just raised. How do you clarify this to the man on the street? Let's go over to Simbi Wabote, who's Executive Secretary of the Content Development and Monitoring Board.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think let me just tee it off from where Prof tried to explain.
Today, we have, like he said, about 37 billion barrels of oil and almost 190 TCF of gas, proven gas reserves in the country, which means that we have potential, because it's proven, we have potential to at least extract that much quantity from our reservoirs, as it were. So just to summarize that, it means that there's a lot more to be done within the oil and gas sector in terms of extracting value out of it. And within the energy mix, like you know, gas perhaps is the new normal in terms of energy development across the world, because it's clean hydrocarbon. It's quietly, of course, addresses the issue of environmental challenge, and we are yet, as a country, to tap the benefit of gas resources in this country. And energy evolution, as it were, will continue to depend on hydrocarbon for the next 30 to 40 years. So if we have to, as a country, ignore the importance of that, then we will not at least address the journey that we want to embark on. So the conference is talking about how do we sustain that process, because we've been having hiccups in terms of our oil production, gas production, but over time we need to use oil and gas to spend our way out of depending on other means of income for the country. So the sustainability element is very key, hence the conference is trying to address that, to say, hey, you have a lot of reserve, and if you check OPEC statistics in terms of dependency on hydrocarbons, that is going to be around for the next 50 years. And that's a very long time. And we as a country, having these abundant resources, we need to do everything we can to extract it in a sustainable way, so that when we transit into other sources of energy, we will not have the challenge that we see in the oil and gas sector. So that's all what the conference is trying to address.
All right, thank you very much, Simbiwa, but we'll come back to you. Let's bring in the other guest, Kayode Akiode. Of course, you are in charge of the engineer projects. That's for Total. That's a major investment project. Again, the same basic question that I asked for us to set a tone for the deeper issues we'll be exploring. Why should we be talking about driving up oil and gas when we're also at the same time talking about saying, listen, there's life beyond oil?
Yeah, that is, you are right, and the need for sustainability speaks to all of us, in the sense that even though the tendency is to say there's life beyond oil, everybody knows today in the world that the need for oil, to have oil continuously being developed, and the demand for oil is there for the next decades, 40 to 50 years from now. So if we are talking about sustainability, is to ensure that we are able to position ourselves in a way that we are able to continuously deliver on what is required from the oil and gas sector, in order to sustainably keep the economy running in the right direction. So this is the plank of the conference.
Madam Kiari, let's come to you. Oil and gas as the bedrock of the Nigerian economy, picking from where he stopped. Now that's Akiode. Now, speak to that. For now, we're trying to diversify the economy, like Kingsley has pointed out, but then this is still our bedrock as of today. How do we sustain it and make it the bedrock of development in the country?
Thank you very much. What's very obvious to Nigerians is what oil brings at the end of the month, which is called the FAC allocations. That's what everybody knows. What most people don't know is that oil has a potential of integrating our entire economic landscape, in the sense that if you are able to develop gas, it will create the linkages between the oil and gas industry to the rest of the industry. That way you have a clear path to developing the country in a long run. But what's most important for us is to understand that the oil and gas industry has a history going forward. As the SG has said, it's clearly that in another 40, 50 years, you still have oil playing a major role in the energy mix. which means that we'll remain relevant as a country, as an oil-producing entity, an oil-producing country for another 40 to 50 years. If that holds, it means that, we have to pay attention to sustainable oil development. And sustainable means that, we must focus on integrating the oil and gas to the rest of the economy. And that way, we know that this country will benefit from it, so that we walk away from this perception that oil and gas industry is all about, sharing money at the end of every month.
Well, still with you, Malam Kiari, could you, again, for the benefit of our viewers, give us some depth as to how, for instance, oil and gas can serve an integrative function for the economy?
Two things. The first thing the oil and gas does for you is to provide the resources that is used for development, in developing infrastructure, which is the easy one that everybody understands, which is the one that brings cash to the table every month, that can be used for infrastructure development and every other thing that government needs to do to the people. That's one element that is very clear. So once it is appropriately managed and those resources are put into the right use, you can see a clear impact of the oil and gas in the rest of the economy. Now, the other part of it is that what can oil and gas do on its own? That means by integrating industries, by providing power, by providing employment, by providing absolute capacity for other people to come and engage our oil and gas industry to benefit from it. So if you look at it from these two perspectives, you know that the oil and gas industry can actually be the bedrock of developing this country.
All right, thank you very much. We're still trying to sort out the audio of Professor Iledare. Professor Ledare, we apologize. Once we sort that one out, we'll come back to you, to provide more depth. Again, just the point, if you recall, Sheung, there was a comment that was made some time ago that the Stone Age came to an end, but the use of stone still continued after the Stone Age. So I guess I've already talked about the utility of oil and gas for sustained economic development. But then the question is, where are we on this path of ensuring that oil and gas continues to, as it were, to provide the sustenance for our larger economic growth and development? Once again, we'll come back to Simbi Wabote.
I think to a large extent, we've made tremendous progress as a country in terms of development of oil and gas. Today, we produce almost about 2.3 million barrels of oil. And I think we have also articulated the proven reserves that we have as a country, both in the oil and gas sector. Today also you have about all the 6 major IOCs in the country are operating in Nigeria. And in terms of oil and gas development, we as a country are challenging the new frontiers. The Egina project, for instance, which is about to be concluded by Total, is in water depth of 1.5 kilometers. That in itself is a serious achievement in terms of technology, where we are going. There are other projects in the funnel, like the Zaba Zaba project, which perhaps is also an ultra-deep development. We'll have a water depth of about 2 kilometers before you hit the surface of the ocean. So in terms of oil and gas development, Nigeria has come a long way. We are also recognized and respected even in the Community of Nations by virtue of the advances we have made in the oil and gas sector in the whole African continent. Then when you talk about the spin-off effect of those activities, we have also made tremendous achievements. Coming back to the local content discourse, before, when we started oil and gas activities in this country, everything about oil and gas was done outside this country. But today, there are lots of activities that we have brought back into the country. I gave you an example of the Total project as an example. Never in Africa have we been able to integrate an FPSO that is almost about 300 or so meters long and about 60 meters wide.
What is FPSO?
The FPSO, of course, is the Floating Production and Storage and Operating System, which of course is in offshore Nigeria, 150 kilometers offshore. That's the Egina FPSO Nigeria. Most people don't see it. And you have a lot of them dotted around the country. But for the first time, a lot of Nigerians were able to see it because it did birth in Lagos for full integration. So in terms of developing the oil and gas sector, we've really come a long way. And most of the activities are then now domiciled in Nigeria. Today, again, I can tell you with all certainty, Nigerians, we are not used to operating upstream in the upstream sector. Today, a lot of indigenous players have oil wells that they have produced, even beyond when it was in the hands of the multinationals. So we've come a long way in terms of developing that resource. And we are perhaps in Africa also seen as an authority in the oil and gas sector so far.
Yes, I'll return to Madam Kyari now. Like you said, Nigeria is an authority in oil and gas production in the world. We're one of the major producers of the commodity in the world. How can we remain globally competitive, knowing what goes on now in the world with the way technology is improving, with the discovery of other forms of energy? How can Nigeria sustain its global competitiveness?
Thank you very much. First of all, you have to get the investors to want to invest in your country. And for you to do that, you must create the necessary environment that will allow for people to want to invest in your country. And one of the clear things that every investor would like to know is fiscal stability. Fiscal stability means that they would like to know on what terms are they investing. Can they recover their costs? Can they make money from it? And do we have a stable regime that will guarantee that? And good enough for us today, the number of legislations have been put in place. One of them is the Petroleum Industry Fiscal Bill, which will guarantee to the international investment community that this country is stable, will have a stable and a workable fiscal regime. Once you have a stable fiscal regime that people can predict the basis of their investment, then you need the social environment itself. A number of work are going on right now to stabilize the situation in the Niger Delta. But of course, we are far away from what was the situation 2 years ago. And today, we have semblance of stability in the Niger Delta region because of all the intervention that government is doing. And that is being progressed. And ultimately, that sense of insecurity in the Delta will vanish. If that does, that's the two combination of issues that every investor will be interested in. And thirdly, going to the market, everybody wants to go to the market on an improved basis. What I mean by this is that nobody wants to take crude oil to the market. If you can, it's best for you to add value to it by processing the crude oil. And as we speak today, the NMPC as an organization is working on its refineries to make sure that we can add value to the crude oil before it is exported. That's after meeting our local consumption needs. And there are also other initiatives like the Dangote refinery and many other initiatives that are going on to make sure that we don't just export crude oil, we export the end products of crude oil. And once you do that, you are seeing some level of relevance in the international oil market. And as you grow your production, you're obviously going to get to a situation where the local refining capacity may not meet that. That means you have to export your crude to other destinations. And you must watch the market. Watching the market means that who needs your crude? Today, there are alternatives to our crude. And that's not a challenge, but going forward, now you have to see how you can work around those alternatives to make sure that you are able to penetrate the market. That way the country becomes relevant in the scheme of things as we go forward, as we look forward to another 30, 40 years where crude oil will continue to be relevant in the energy mix. We will play a part in the sense that we are stabilizing our fiscals, we are stabilizing our operating environment. We are also penetrating the market in two different ways, one by putting in end products, and secondly by making sure that where there are surplus production, we get to the market in the best of terms.
All right, Kyari, thank you very much. Now, we understand that Professor Eledare's audio has been sorted out. Professor Eledare, again, let's take you back to the premier question that we posed, but rephrased differently. Namely, how relevant will oil and gas continue to be to Nigeria's energy economics and benefit?
Thank you again, and I think the ES SMS has said it well, so I won't repeat that aspect. But basically, I think the issue is energy supply mix. And you said it correctly too. In the Stone Age, we still have stone today. In the Coal Age, we still have coal today. It's only technology that will displace petroleum. But when we come to Nigeria, to me, oil and gas is still the engine that will propel the Nigerian economy to where we need to be. In the world today, we have almost 2 trillion barrels of oil. proven. Nigeria has 37 to 39 billion. And it's not with respect to just cash. We are talking in terms of sustainable economic development. If there's one thing the oil and gas industry in Nigeria has done, is the National Content Act, whereby some of the resources that are in here are being used, and that's how you sustain your economy. The oil and gas, and I've said it over and over again, is going to be like that engine that will propel us to where we need to go. Power, infrastructure, research and development, and even institutional empowerment. And I've said it before, if you look at all over the world, there are countries that are making leaps and bounds who have no oil. Japan, they take nearly 40% of LNG market to meet up their energy need. South Korea. If I just came from Romania, if you see cars that are driven on the road, taxis, they are powered by compressed natural gas. This is what oil and gas can do to an economy. And it begins with retaining the profit locally. And I think that's where we are trying to go, moving away from export of crude and processing the raw materials. Even our natural gas policy, if it is domesticated, has greater possibility of creating multiplier effect in the economy. Oil and gas is expected to last nearly 50 years at current production rate. And we better take advantage of it. And if I may conclude, even if you look at the renewables as of today, it's not meeting up to 10% of primary energy need globally. And if you even look at renewable in Africa, it's not even contributing only 2%. So even if the Western world is trying to move to renewable, I've always said that the policy in Nigeria is to talk the talk, because you're not going to get the investment if you don't talk the talk. But you cannot move away because your economy is still on structure and primitive. And so oil and gas is going to be what we can use to structure our economy to be able to make the type of impact that it did in other parts of the world. In fact, you will see that Romania will say they are the first to produce oil as far back as nearly 200 years ago. And they are still producing. And you can even see the contribution of Petrom in Romania, even though they are producing less than 200,000 barrels per day. But you could see their impact. The company contributes 10% of Romania GDP, 100%. Could you imagine us then with 2 million barrels per day, and we're not even contributing 12% to our GDP? So that means we are not using the oil and gas the way we should use it to propel our economy. And I think that's probably what the government is looking at right now with respect to making sure that the National Content Act, despite its deficiency, and I may say that, can help us to get to where we need to get to, 25% contribution to GDP. And that's where we can sustain the economy.
Thank you, Prof. Let's go to Mr. Akyode now. You're from the private sector. Using our strength and what we have in reserves in the oil and gas sector, how do we think we can use public-private partnership to achieve this sustainable development using oil and gas?
Thank you very much. As has been clearly said, you know, the oil and gas seems to be today the main, the economic driver the driver for our economy. And when the oil and gas sector is strong and buoyant, all the dependent companies and sectors are also doing well. So to that extent, when the oil and gas sector has a lot of development projects to do, it has a multiplier effect on all the service providers to the oil and gas industry, to the economy, because as you know, whenever there's a project development in the oil and gas sector, we have so many other companies who are providing services to ensure that those projects are delivered and rightly so. So to that extent, the health of the oil and gas sector will translate to the health of the economy, and it's, as has been said by other participants here today, the oil and gas sector will be the driving force, the engine to push the economy of the country forward. So in that respect, it will help us to have a sustainable development and carry the economy to the direction we want it to be.
Oh, well, still with you, Mr. Kilde. Of course, you will listen to the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board. Link that up with the sentiments often expressed by the Minister of State for Petroleum, Ibe Kachuku, talking about the need to have lower cost of production. And this normally will be on the side, for instance, of the IOCs. What are the impediments to lower cost of production on the one hand? And secondly, to what extent has the Nigerian Content Act assisted in helping you lower your costs by sourcing your materials locally?
Okay, there are two questions in one there. First, the impediments to lowering production costs. Of course, most of the oil industry, and particularly my company, in the last couple of years, our focus had been towards reducing our operating costs. And there are several schemes we have put in place to ensure that we bring down our production costs. But that we cannot do in isolation, because we operate in an environment, and the cost of technology, okay, is within our control. We can cap that, but outside that, the environment in which we operate, the infrastructure that have to be put in place, the security of the environment, all these add to the cost of production, and it's something that have to be addressed at a national level for it to really bring to bear. The oil companies will do their bit by making sure that the cost of technology, the cost of project supervision, and all that are brought down as much as possible by going out to ensure that the technology you bring to bear is at the barest minimum cost. But when you now add on top of that what you have to do in order to secure your work environment, it's something that sometimes we probably will not have control over that. It's a larger thing beyond what the oil industry, or the oil companies alone can deal with. It has to be a all-stakeholder affair to be able to do that.
And then local content?
With respect to local content, there's always a premium, as we know. If today, for example, if I use a Gina project as an example, Gina project, when we started, it was agreed with the NCDMB, the level of local content we are going to be able to achieve, and we kept it at 77%, and that we are achieving. Of course, it has a premium, but it is what we are looking beyond. Okay, what is the immediate cost? Because as you say, it's a sustainable thing. What we look at more is not the cost of the project today, but what is the multiplier effect on the economy. Today, we have, as a result of the Gina project, so many yards in Nigeria have been developed, they have been upgraded, so they are ready to take on more projects. There are a lot of Nigerians now. For example, Gina employed almost 3,000 Nigerians over the last 5 years that it's been in operation. And these are things we look at. It's more value adding than to talk purely in terms of naira and dollar. So it's beyond just okay, it has a premium, but over time it's going to even out, and the benefit will be more for the country.
Thank you, Mr. Kyode. Let's come to Mr. Wabote. Let's still continue with local content. Content development and monitoring. What has been your experience?
I will come to that, but let me just address the question that he asked Mr. Kyode in terms of cost drivers in the oil and gas sector. There are various parameters that drive cost up in production. I know this by virtue of my 25 years experience in the oil and gas sector. He mentioned security, which is key. He talked about infrastructure, which is also key in terms of driving cost up. He talked about technology, is also key in driving cost. He talked about, perhaps he didn't mention, one of it is also the contracting circle process, because if you have to spend so much time in contracting, at the end of the day, the contractors will load the cost on the activity. So these are clear parameters that constitute the cost in the oil and gas sector. But this administration, through the launch of the 7 Big Win, is being focused on addressing most of these issues. First, for instance, is the Niger Delta situation in terms of security. And I think for the past 2 years, we have had relative peace within the Niger Delta. At some point, our production came to about 500,000 barrels per day. But today, we are doing 2.3 million barrels per day of oil production. So that is being addressed. In the infrastructure bit, I think a lot is being done by the government, also including the local content board, to address some of the infrastructure challenges that we also see in terms of manufacturing in the oil and gas sector. So that is also being addressed. Of course, we are applying technology to bring down costs. Today, one of the IOCs will compete squarely with other companies all over the world in terms of cost of producing per barrel of oil. So that we have focusing on and addressing as a country in terms of bringing down the cost. And the other bit again, when people talk about oil and gas, the only thing that comes to mind is PMS and diesel. And kerosene in most instances, and also perhaps cooking gas. But if you look at this place you're seated in, you could see that almost 70 to 80% of the things you see here are produced out of the oil that you know today and gas. So the impact of oil and gas in terms of any country's economic development, it's more than the PMS, the AGO, and the cooking gas that you see. It has, so if you take those out, that perhaps constitute, like PMS, it constitutes maybe about 20% of the entire value you derive from the oil and gas sector. So for a very long time, we are going to depend on oil in all these things, derivatives that we produce. So we have to devise strategies and means to sustain that oil and gas and spend our way out of oil to other sectors we want to diversify on. And the other bit is that over time, Nigerians have seen the oil and gas sector as a commodity and not as a resource. And that's been the challenge in the past. That's why we were exporting all the services to the international companies and then dependent on taxes and royalties because we saw it as a commodity. By the time we change our mindset and see oil and gas as a resource that you can expand in so many ways, I think we'll move forward. But my experience, back to your question, in terms of my experience in the oil and gas sector, I think it's been a roller coaster ride. There are some sectors who fervently believe in the development of local content. There are others who believe in the maximizing of profit because most of the international oil companies or local companies are businesses. If they see opportunity to cream 20, 30% return on investment, that is what they will go for. And that's what makes it attractive. But if they want sustainability for the long run, they have to invest in human capital. They have to invest and be part of the infrastructural development in the country. They have to ensure that they have security of supply. I give you an example. During the Niger Delta crisis, most of the international oil companies left us, and production came down because there were security challenges. And some of the companies decided to change their mindset on how to use locals, how to use Nigerians in order to enhance their production. And their production went up. Those who continuously dependent on foreign companies almost went under. So local content in itself ensures security of supply. And so that has been the journey in terms of roller coaster with those who believe in its impact in the economy and those who want to cream and maximize profit. If you leave them, they will focus on 30, 50% return on investment. But we also understand the economics of projects, and we understand the international benchmark. If they can get the international benchmark out of their investment, that is what we drive them to achieve in the country. Hence, making them to believe in the local content journey and keep them within the project economics of international benchmark in terms of return on investment.
All right, thank you very much, Sembiwa. But I was going to ask Malam Kiara this question first, but I will first bring in Professor Iledare because we kept him in abeyance for a while. Professor Iledare, and in fact, gentlemen, we have seen the rise of a number of African countries as oil-producing entities on the eastern coast of the continent, also along West Africa and elsewhere, greater exploration for oil. The other day, I think the Congo Basin was also being tapped. Now, what does this mean? Because if you are going to have increased production, then there will be less attraction or fewer markets, as it were, for our own crude oil production, which today it's 2.3 million barrels. What does that tell us in terms of having to drive the other end of value addition, and where are we at that now?
Well, honestly, I still think we are doing great as a nation if we focus in. We have nearly 200 million people in Nigeria. We also have about 340 million people in West African coast. And Nigeria is still an attractive place for investment. The key reason why we tend not to be competing with respect to investment flow is governance structure of the oil and gas industry. And now we have the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, which has been passed, which I'm sure the president is reviewing. It's coming late, but it's better late than never. 2, we can compete with any other African countries because we actually have one of the best professionals in the oil and gas industry in Nigeria that compete with anywhere in the world. Go all over the world. You see Nigerians in key position in international companies. So we have that advantage. We do not also have in West African coast the type of reserves and resources that we have. In fact, we have close to 600 trillion cubic feet of gas to be tapped. If we put our governance of the industry in place, and then, in my opinion, move away from transfer payment, because it doesn't develop anywhere, and then build infrastructure with oil. I've said it over and over again. You use oil, which is exhaustible resource, to develop non-exhaustible resource, which begins with human brain and human intellect. That was what we did in the 70s that put us in a competitive advantage, and we can still do it. Third, in terms of the domestic market, and I think you and I, before when I was on the panel, the US population is about 340 million. They're consuming between 18 and 20 million barrels of oil per day. We are 170 million. 2.5 million barrels per day is not enough to sustain the potential of the Nigerian economy. And again, going back to what we are trying to do now. Our problem with oil and gas is that it's not giving us the type of revenue that we used to have. But if it is giving us sustainable development, so be it. The diversification that we are talking about is moving away from oil and gas as a revenue source.
As a commodity.
Exactly. We want to look at oil and gas as a source of power to grow the economy. And if we focus on that, our potential is limited. But we must not leave behind intergenerational use of this oil in anticipation of those coming in the future. I think that's where we currently have a problem in Nigeria that is affecting our development. We must not let our institutions deteriorate. And oil is something we can use to do it quicker. And I think NCMD is doing that, PTDF is doing that, try to develop human capacity to sustain the economy. And if you just allow me, with respect to production cost, we have to be careful. In the fiscal bill now, we have a provision in the Petroleum Fiscal Bill that reward cost efficiency. That if you make effort to reduce your cost, the fiscal bill is going to give you a reward to lower your taxes. It is only when you don't lower your cost per unit that you can be indirectly penalized. But it's not actually a penalty. You're going to be denied the incentive. And also, there's also a provision there that says that if you're also able to look for more reserves, the government is willing, through the fiscal bill, to also reward you. And that is the concept of sustainability. What you use, you replace.
All right, Professor Ledari, thank you very much. Malam Kyari, again, let me pop this question to you. Some months ago, Nigeria, of course, hosted the first, what was described as the first African summit on oil and gas, incorporating producers and other players from elsewhere on the African continent, indicating the leadership role of Nigeria. But what does that signify if we are having many more players now in the oil and gas field? Particularly with regard to our sustainable economic development agenda. If you're having many more players and we have not moved away from the sense of commodity to essential resource.
Yes, I think what's very key is to look at the global scene and then you tie it to the African situation. It's very clear that oil consumption will continue to grow. And therefore, there is a fear in the industry that the production increase may not match the increase in demand. And therefore, we don't see any competition coming from the marginal production that is coming from many of the African countries that are coming in place. Now, that put aside, you know, in terms of our aspiration as a country is to harness the resources of Africa, pull everybody together so that we can work in a single direction. In the sense that what happens in Nigeria impacts what happens in Ghana and our neighbors and all the other West African countries. Today, we have production coming from Ghana, we have production coming from Nigeria, Angola, and so on. Many more countries are coming on board, Kenya, Uganda, and so on. And they're all looking forward to us for leadership because we have more experience than they have, we have more capacity than they have. And therefore, developing Africa is of enormous importance for us. First, because we look forward to becoming an industrial nation. And you need a market for that. If you don't develop this country, if you don't help them to develop, you're not going to see the market that you're going to export your products. So in that synergy of interest, that's why Nigeria is taking the lead in making sure that we help them to develop.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and of course our focus has been on the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. We'll return with your reactions and, of course, more discussion.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Chief. Good morning, sir. You are here already?
No, now my spirit day, my body day for house. What kind of question is that? Were you not the one that fixed this meeting for 8 a.m.? You are now coming by 10 a.m. and start asking me jam questions.
But Chief, now, I'm sorry. Don't you also go late for meetings sometimes? You know now, African time.
No more African time. And no more pancaking of face during office hours. At the end of the day, we will lose valuable time. We will not make progress. If we want to move this nation forward, we must treat business as business and respect time. Change begins with me.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry. Can we go for the meeting now, Chief?
Better.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on Africa's largest television network, the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have our 4 guests here with us in the studios, and we're still discussing how to sustain Nigeria's economic growth and development through the oil and gas sector. As my colleague Show indicated, we have a number of reactions that have come in from viewers who have sent in their tweets. You can see the handle there at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen at NTA GMN. We'll take some of those tweets now, and then we'll return to our guests. Aminu Haliru tweets, it's imperative for the Nigerian government to continue to manage the relationship between the host communities around the region and the multinational companies, such that harnessing oil and gas would remain a mechanism for peaceful national development.
And another of our regulars, Dele Jack Solomon, says ensuring a conducive business environment is essential to attracting investments and running reliable operations. There must be sanctity of existing contract, robust commercial and legal framework, judicious use of revenue, and overcoming security challenges, particularly in the Niger Delta region.
Festus Akimboyewa tweets, now, the volume of gas we have in Nigeria has huge potentials to revolutionize our development. Government must provide the right conditions for the gas industry to fully explore its potentials.
And Victor Ohioswama says government alone cannot harness the vast oil and gas resources in the country. We need massive private sector investment in the sector.
Let me go straight to Omobola on Babs. It says, if Nigeria must put herself on the path of development, much as we try to diversify the economy away from oil-based model product, the potentials in the gas sector must be harnessed and exploited to optimal advantage. There must be a paradigm shift.
And Mike Anyakwo thinks what is happening in Nigeria's oil and gas resources sector is really an economist nightmare. We're not properly harnessing the potentials of the sector because of obvious reasons of maladministration and corruption.
Dele Jack Solomon says the global dependence on a naturally limited resource is clearly unsustainable, and the cost of social and environmental damage is enormous. Nigeria will benefit far more from directing attention to renewable energy and developing manufacturing and agricultural industries.
And Ostino says oil and gas has not made any impact in terms of real development in Nigeria compared to countries such as Qatar and other parts of the Middle East.
Now, Ishaku Musa tweets, the oil and gas sector can facilitate the full-scale development of an economy like ours because the sector, that's oil and gas, is one of the major sources of foreign exchange earnings. Now, from the turnover you have in oil and gas, you can transform other sectors such as agriculture, solid minerals, transportation, etc.
And Cecilia Okoroma asks a pertinent question. I thought by now importation of PMS would have been a thing of history. What's happening?
Sani Michael Abakoji, as we advance towards a knowledge-driven economy, we also try to catch up with the rest of the world. It is pertinent to give more attention to renewable energy in line with today's reality. This would help us to achieve efficiency, save costs, and derive more revenue.
And Cecilia Okoroma again says, due to non-utilization of byproducts of our crude, employment is generated to other countries while our youth wallow in poverty. I think I'll take off from that point from Cecilia Okoroma, and I'll return to Malam Kiari. She asks, what's happening to why is PMS still being imported at this point? What's happening?
Thank you very much. First, 2 issues. On the refining. It's a key issue that's making us to import. Why are we under refining? We have 4 refineries today, and of course we're doing a lot of intervention to make sure that they come to optimum. So even if all the 4 refineries are optimally operating today, they can only produce a maximum of 18 million liters of PMS. That means that you have a net deficit of PMS to import into the country until new refineries come in place. There's no way you can avoid import of petroleum product, particularly PMS. And why don't we have more refineries? I think that's the question that needs to be addressed now. Why is only government that is in the refining business? 2 things, until you have a stable sell regime. What I mean by this is that, when people are not sure at what price are they going to sell this product into the market, they will not invest in the refinery, because what that means is that you have to come into some form of a subsidy scheme where you produce above cost. For instance, as we speak today, petroleum product, landing cost today is about 180 naira per liter. So if you produce today and we are selling at 145, it is impossible for a refiner to sell it at 145, even at the refinery, get and recover his cost. So until you give that guarantee, nobody will put money into refining. And once those fiscal stabilities are settled, which what the petroleum legislation process is trying to do, once you're able to settle that, it means that people can now invest in the refining. And then, of course, we're looking forward to the coming up on stream of the Dangote refinery. If that happens, and you are able to meet the gap between the current demand and the local capacity, then you can forget about import of petroleum product. Today, we are looking at petroleum product consumption in the region of 50 million liters per day. So if you're only making 80 million liters of gasoline today, it means that you literally have to import petroleum products to augment that difference. And that's also not very strange in a way. For instance, Iran, we all know that it's a major oil-producing country, but it's still a net importer of petroleum, despite the fact that they have a number of refineries that are operating. People have different reasons for importing. For instance, today, even in the United States, they have sufficiency of refining, but they still export petroleum product to some countries. And at a certain point in time, when the market allows, you see petroleum product, finished petroleum product coming into the United States. So it doesn't mean that when you have all refineries in place, it means that you are not going to import petroleum. There are market conditions that will allow you to import, even if you have the refineries operating.
All right, Madam Carey, thank you very much. I don't want us to get into the perennial argument of appropriate pricing of trouble, which petroleum products, has often generated in the past 25 years, because there are all kinds of reactions you will get from stakeholders with regard to whether or not, we have the appropriate pricing, or whether appropriate pricing should be a condition precedent to the establishment of refineries. Some persons have argued, in spite of the conditions you have, Dangote has put his investment down there, and the thing is coming up on stream, which is why my question is going to Mr. Kayode Akinode. You work for one of the IOCs, that's one of the international oil corporations. Why have oil companies, international oil companies, been averse to setting up refineries in Nigeria?
Thank you for your question. And I think Mr. Kiari, tried to answer.
No, he works for NOC, that's the National Oil Company. You work for IOC.
Yes, I know. So I'm just trying to take off from the plank he already established, in the sense that IOCs, as we know them, they have standard to which they work. And in investing in any business, what you look out for is, okay, what are the economics? So the economics today, if I just summarize it, is a matter of the economics. Because you want to invest in something that you, at least, if you are not making profit, you should be able to break even. From what he said, if we are not putting refineries, is either due to reasons of policies and regulations and fiscal regime. So these are basically things that have to be dealt with at the right level, and every investor or the IOCs have to be clearly made to agree on, okay, what will be the basis, what will be, if you are putting you are investing in refineries, what will be the operating environment. So to that extent, you will understand that if you want to invest in a business, you are sure the economics are right, the policies are okay, and you are going to be able to operate in a level playing field.
Professor Eledari, I'm wondering, familiar rationalization? Or excuses?
Well, I think both of them are right, but I don't necessarily think that if we refine petroleum product in Nigeria, the price must be the same as the international market. I do not think that if we actually refine petroleum product in Nigeria, the price will be more than 145 naira per liter. The reason why the price is high is because, one, the exchange rate, two, instability in institutional framework, and three, government policy and regulation. And I will expand on the last one. If you bring a byproduct, a finished product from abroad, and you bring a raw material to do your work here, the duty that you pay for raw material, is it the same with final product? And that does not put them in competitive level. So if we have enough refinery in Nigeria, and there's nothing that says refinery cannot be profitable in Nigeria for international company. It just depends on government policy. They may not like it. The government can wake up today and say 50% of the crude oil produced in Nigeria must be refined here.
What's
Mr. Obote, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm not saying they will say it, but they could.
No, you're saying if.
You understand the probability.
Just like Prof is alluding to, and perhaps some of the points that have been made by Malam Kyari and Akeode in terms of how the international oil companies look at their business model. Like I said, they are businesses and they rejoice when the return on investment is very high. But I have an experience. I discovered that even while working for a multinational, when the price of oil is low, the refineries give them more profit. But when the price of oil goes up, the refinery margins reduces. So long as the price of oil continue to be where it is, where they cream a lot of return on investment is on the upstream sector, which is producing the hydrocarbon. But when it comes low to $27 a barrel, came to 50, and the rest of it, the refineries are more profitable for them, as it were, because the reason is that they get crude at the cheap price, and they refine and get a lot of byproducts and also sell their PMS and AGO. But I align with Professor in terms of sitting down with most of them and also asking what are the impediments to your inability to invest in refinery in the country. Most of it probably will end up with government policies and fiscal regimes. If you're able to negotiate that to a level that the margin that they make out of it is acceptable in terms of project economics, they will. After all, the Port Harcourt refinery was built by Shell as at then, when they came into the country. And they ran it for a very long time before they handed it over to NMPC, as it were. It was profitable. Today also, we have the petrochemical plant, which initially was not profitable, but with the private sector, now they are creaming a lot of benefit out of it. So potentially they will invest. And like he said, government policy can possibly say, look, any agreement we have with you, you must refine 50% of your crude. They can say yes. However, can you please look at these impediments? After all, there is enough market in the country. There is enough market within the West African coast. There is enough market in Africa for these refineries to thrive. I think Dangote is taking a bold step in terms of investing, and I'm very sure, I don't know, that he will be discussing with government in terms of some of the fiscal regimes and some of the policies, because he's not investing it as a social welfare program. He's investing it as a business, and he will make profit out of it. And coming back to the refinery discussions again, I also think that if locally produced, you might not necessarily have the same cost margin as when you import it. I think Prof has made it very clear. The exchange regime in itself, which is not stable in itself, you buy, you import in dollars and you sell in naira. So that gives you that kind of exchange rate that government will probably continue to augment. But if we do local refinery through the review of some of the policies and government directives and the rest of it all, I sincerely believe that investors will begin to look inwards in order to establish a refining capacity.
Thank you, Mr. Obote. Let me return to Madam Kyari, and I want to narrow down to gas now. While we're not harnessing our huge potential in the gas sector, let me look at it like this. From even the layman's, what we the laymen know about gas, the cooking gas, and what we use for the industries, like the textile industries and other areas, we still find it difficult for the supply and the demand. There's still a huge gap in there. What's the problem with gas supply? Why are we not harnessing our potential in that sector?
I think let's go local. Let's address the LPG or the cooking gas. The demand has not outstripped supply, and that's why you are not seeing that commensurate investment by stakeholders. There are a number of interventions that government tried to do to make sure that LPG utilization is optimized. remember that there was there's a free gas cylinder program that government did. And what people did was they took those cylinders and sold them. And therefore, those cylinders became unavailable in the market. And therefore, even if you bring in the gas, there's no utilization for that gas. Now, the second issue we have is that of infrastructure. Good enough today, we have a number of installations dotted in Calabar, in Lagos, and in Port Harcourt that will enable landing of LPG into terminals. 3 years ago, those were practically unavailable to a large extent. So once you develop those infrastructure and you are able to deliver this gas from the place of production, which is typically from the Niger Delta, which is still possible, or even from imports, then you are able to bring it into the Nigerian market. Those infrastructures are just being developed, and they are going to be delivered soon. When that happens, you will see a rapid growth in the utilization of LPG or the cooking gas, as we call it now. Looking beyond cooking gas, today there are a number of large-scale intervention projects to make sure that gas is brought into the domestic market. And that means that there must be, those processes must work such that you have gas to power to a very large extent, so that you power the entire industries that are available. And then you have gas to industry, so that you can convert the gas to other usable activities. And a number of intervention activities are going on. So probably in another 2 to 3 years' time, you're going to see a rapid change in the scenario of gas utilization in the countries. As we may be aware, there are a number of projects, large-scale projects for delivery of gas to industries. And once those take place, you will see a massive integration between the gas and the rest of the economy. But I think that we have a very short-term view of what's going to happen in the gas industry, such that we'll see a massive transformation in our industry.
Well,
that's my take.
All right, Madam Carey, still with you. A related issue has to do with the pricing of crude oil supplied for domestic utilization. Crude oil, that's to say involving gas as well, let's say oil and gas. We often hear that this is priced in US dollars. And there are complaints. We have had guests on this program who are saying that, because oil is an international commodity, they say that it's also priced in US dollars, and that cost is then passed on. You have all kinds of complaints along those who utilize it. For instance, those who are in the power sector and all kinds of other complaints. Why is this so? Why is crude oil being sold, or oil and gas being sold in US dollars, produced in Nigeria, to Nigerian potential users?
Yes, you see, you must understand and accept that crude oil is an international commodity. And therefore, there must be a basis of relativity among all stakeholders, from the banks to traders to refiners to investors, so that you have a common basis of understanding what's the value of that barrel of crude that you are producing. And for you to recover your costs, there must be a way of measuring that, you are looking at a single basis of measurement. And of course, I'm sure there are recent interjection into the sense that we're going to use the Chinese currency to convert cash. But essentially, the market and the world has accepted that there must be a single currency for determining the value of petroleum. And therefore, when you are establishing a refinery, it doesn't matter whether a refinery is in Nigeria or in Ghana or in America, and a refinery is a refinery. Refinery operates on a margin. The margin is typically $6 to $7 of a margin. So what distinguishes one refinery from the other is its efficiency. So one refinery can have margin of $7, another can have as low as 4 to 5, or even 0 if you don't do well. So for you to measure that, you must have a currency that you can measure and understand that you are in the right business. Now, the second part of it is that why are we selling crude oil to Nigeria refineries in the US dollar? It's still a currency conversion issue. If you want to sell it in Naira, you can do that. You say, look, one refinery, come and take this crude, you're going to pay in Naira. But what's the conversion rate, which Ubota has alluded to? When you convert that currency, say at 305 to the dollar, then you are also still literally saying that you are selling at the dollar, because you can actually see the relativity between these two. But what we must understand is that for you to sell crude oil to a refinery and you don't have a benchmark pricing basis, then you are in trouble. Because at the end of the day, the refiner will not know at what price he's going to sell his end product into the open market. Therefore, when you have that benchmark currency and you are selling at the international price, you will know that you are competing against the international market. And therefore, the prices that you are bringing into the market will be reflective of its value in the market. Otherwise, you are going to create distortions. If you are selling it at a different currency and at a lower rate, And therefore, what it means is that you are actually subsidizing that product to the international market.
Madam Carey, thanks a lot. Let me just interject because we're pressed for time now. Professor Eledare, how do we illuminate this in economic terms? Perhaps for the IOCs, one can understand to say that okay, they have integrated international operations. But let's say for the NNPC itself, which also has an exploration and production arm, which is NPDC. So, and then you have the local expertise whom you have praised, you know, here in the course of the program, and which, of course, experts around the world know. How do we understand all of this, that you are getting crude oil, you are producing crude oil in Nigeria, say by the NNPC arm, and then also selling in dollars to the refineries, or gas, and then also selling to power operators in US dollars? That was a major challenge, if you remember, some time ago. How do we understand this?
Well, again, you said it rightly. You said it's about economics. And I know you don't have time, so I can't tell jokes. It's an expected opportunity loss. You give up something, and you want to minimize the losses based on what you gave up to choose this. So if you have an international commodity, nobody says you cannot sell it at Naira. But you're going to pay someone who borrowed you the money in the first place in a completely different currency. It's just like even investing in refinery. You went and borrowed money at 10%, and it's delivering you something at 8%. That means the project is not viable. And so what you do is to make sure you recover whatever cost you incurred. And you want to minimize the opportunity loss. That's the basic economic principle. The issue we have at the level of our development is balancing what I call 4 E's: efficiency, effectiveness, equity, and ethics.
Prof, we'll have to let you. we'll have to. We're pressed for time. But before I let you go, Madam Kyari, we need to talk about this FARC expectations from states about the cash from the NNPC every month.
That's right. From time to time, there's a deadlock now. The NNPC hasn't provided the requisite funding, and that's these are bread and butter issues that Nigerians face.
Thank you very much.
With oil and gas.
We're a national oil company owned by the state. Therefore, we are completely answerable and accountable to the state. So when our shareholders, which is represented by the state government, the local governments, and the federal government, ask questions, you know, we have no option than to respond to it. And what has been the issue all along is an expectation versus reality. And expectation is such, it must be based on some set of planning, you know, and with profound respect for all the institutions. We have an understanding with all the institutions of government, and to the extent of what they expect for NNPC to deliver to the state. And where those expectations are met, and there are expectations beyond that, there are issues that we're going to sort out with them, we'll engage them, we'll talk to them.
And we hope you do that.
Yes, we'll do that. But what is very clear is that, you know, we have met the expectations of the stakeholders who are the investors in these companies, who have kept to their rules, we have delivered on the basis of their expectations, on the basis of even legislation, particularly even including the 2018 Appropriation Acts, and we're engaging them to clarify issues for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In the meantime, salaries have been owed, by the way, I believe. They have to work on the IGR.
Madam Kyari, thank you very much. Group General Manager, Crude Oil Marketing of the NNPC. We appreciate your time. And also joined us to discuss this, Simbi Wabote. He is the Executive Secretary, Nigerian Content Development Monitoring Board. We'd also like to thank Professor Wumi Ledare, President, Nigerian Association for Energy Economics, and Kayode Akiode, who is the GINA Project General Manager, Total Upstream Nigeria Limited. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us in this robust discussion. We'll take a break now, and we'll actually be going into sports. We're on day 20 of the Russia 2018 FIFA World Cup. England qualified to the next round after a heated penalty shootout with Colombia. Let's join our sports desk for details.
World number 1 Rafael Nadal